タイとかだと思うので、じゃあちょっと名前も後からメモっておいていただけるといいかなと思います。はい。で、モーションはインフォスライドの長いので繰り返しませんが、ディスタンスでプレスのボタンということで、早速やっていきたいと思います。で、プライムミニスターの方からお願いします。すみません。一応、いるかどうかの確認で、ガバオコは多分全員いると思うんですけど、ジャッジだけいるか先生確認させてください。あつきさんいますか？
はい、います。
はい。エミさんいますか？
います。
はい。ミキさんいますか？
います。
はい、ありがとうございます。聖一郎さんいますか？
います。
はい、OK です。すみません。じゃあ改めてプライムミニスターお願いします。
Okay, I'm the first speaker from the government, and I prefer she and him. Okay, I'm starting my speech now. Two arguments are given from the government side. First, why this creates a happier life, and second, why the life on opposition is really bad. Now moving on to the first argument, why this creates a happier life. First, what does the life on the opposition side look like? Two layers. A, they'll have a normal life. They will continue working in their company. They will quit job at 65 and they'll die at 70, 80, 90 or whenever. B, why is this bad? Two layers. First, they will start to lose interest in their lives. As a premise, life gets boring when you get older. You will quit a job, your friends die, your friends start to die every month, and you get lonely and die with that loneliness. Second, they can't achieve something special in their whole life. For example, inventing something, or to take so much time on doing something. Second, what is the comparative? 2 points. A, the biggest difference between their side and our side is that on our road, this person X have more freedom and more time. Why? This is because this person will be reborn as 25 years old. This is extremely good for this person because they can use the childhood to do whatever they want to do. Note, childhood is a unique time where you can do things freely. This is for two reasons. First, because you don't have to work. Obviously, it's not you, but it's your parents that feed you. Whereas when you're already an adult, you have to buy things for yourself and take care of yourself completely. Second, because there are a lot of support structure. Unlike when you are an adult, you're seen as an independent.
Point.
No, thank you. Independent. Your parents and your sisters and your family members will help you to do stuff. In the comparative, I think you can do a variety of things. The first thing you can do is simple. You can re-enjoy your teenager. Years that is said to be the most your teenage years are the most enjoyable time. Two layers. The reason why these times are the most enjoyable is because you get to experience a lot of things with autonomy and freedom. Second, you don't have to worry about working. You can chat with your friends, you can play with your besties, and you can make a girlfriend for instance. But the second thing you can do is studying. Here are two reasons why this actor is likely to study and prepare for the future. Two layers. First, unlike the normal children who feels less proximate to work, this actor is the person who actually understands the struggles that people with middle-class jobs face. They understand the importance of having money because they have experienced in the past. In our world, it is likely that this actor would study and actually prepare for college entrance, actually prepare for a college school degree. But secondly, because mental age is probably higher. Because you already experienced a lot of things in the past, you're already mentally higher, and therefore I think they're likely to study. But even if you don't study as much, I think you can be successful insofar as you have more experience, and you have just simply studied more than an average person. So what does this connect to? Three things. First, it's extremely likely that this individual is able to have a successful life in a capitalistic society. Second, this looks like passing the entrance exam of Tokyo University. This looks like being able to get into the most successful job where you can earn more money. Three, I think it is incredibly probable that you can get better jobs because you've already experienced so many things like job interviews and job applications and other things. So, what is the impact of this? You will be able to make a happier life through your second life. You may earn more money and you get married to someone, so the quality of life will definitely improve compared to the other side of the house.
Point.
So, no, thank you. So this button can make your life happier. You can just simply have more money on our side of the house. This is important because money is the money is the important part to anything in the in this society. And even if you are middle class right now, you need more money in the future when you have kids. In times of emergency, for instance, when the economic crisis occurs, you need money. Also, you can spend more time with your families and relatives on our side. So we think that through your second life, you can share your happiness with other people. For example, joining volunteer activities in local communities or helping with housework in your daily life. Additionally, you may contribute to the society as you become a principal, as you become a principal or the top of corporations. We have two reasons for this. First, you have much knowledge, which is accumulated during your first life, so you can understand the emotion of employee of appearance of the company. Second, even if you do not have the much talent, you have already known how to communicate with other people through your first life. So they have the legitimacy to be top of corporations. Finally, I want to explain why the life on a position is really bad. I want to explain that even if we die younger on our side, we think it's still better. Why? This is because as time passes, you're less likely to have fun or enjoy activities, as I said before. Firstly, because because the more you age, the things you can do will diminish over time. For example, biology diminish over time. Secondly, because this won't change. Honestly, the amount of time you are experiencing is not going to change on either side of the house. Therefore, we're so proud to propose this motion. Thank you so much.
はい、ありがとうございます。では、リードボーポジションの方お願いします。
Okay, sorry if my camera is a little tilted. I will start my speech in I will start my speech in 3, 2, and 1. 3 things to do in this debate. Firstly, framing. Secondly, rebuttals. Thirdly, introduce our 3 main points. Now, firstly, onto framing. Note that insofar as the motion clarification tells us so, this debate is from a God perspective, which is better for you to press. This means that we will and can debate on the social implications of this motion alongside the individual. Second, insofar as the average, you're unlikely to have found one thing that gives your entire life meaning and that makes you genuinely happy. With that, onto the rebuttals. Now, let's look at this from 3 points of view. Firstly, life in our world. Secondly, amount of growth through pushing the button. Secondly, life on their world. Now, let's start with rebuttals on life on our world. They seem to paint the picture of a normal life as this hellish landscape where you lose interest in everything, you die lonely and afraid. Yet we don't think this is the case. The average individual person isn't going to live such a meaningless, sad life. We don't get any mechanisms for their side. We think this is really unrealistic. And on biology, yes, of course, there's going to be 25 years, which is aging for a long time. Yet the thing is, you never know what an individual can do. That biology can change between people. You never know the aging of this person. Secondly, let's look at the amount of growth through pushing the button. Now, they've talked about wonderful things, like you're going to have more freedom, you're going to not have to work, you're going to support people. Yeah, why is this all not true, right? Now, this is also going to have, we're also going to explain some negatives of pushing the button in our main points, but let's start with this, right? You're simply an average person. You might have had some great knowledge about something, but you're probably not going to have been that special that you can live through one more teenager and experience something so great that you can climb to the top of the company or something like that. We think that's simply not realistic. Proposition seems to paint this world where the normal person lives a sad, pathetic life, and then when you suddenly live 15 more teenagers, you're suddenly going to become a great CEO or something. We simply don't see that as realistic. Thirdly, let's look at life in their world. We think this is we're probably going to explain this more in our main arguments. Let's get on to the arguments. First point on the individual. This is basically the lives, all of our lives, right? Oh wait, no, sorry. Firstly, you can use this button now, means that you haven't thought it through and rationally, and you're probably going to forget it later. Now, basically imagine this is probably going to be our lives right now. You choose to do something, then later when you do that thing, you imagine, oh, what would I do if I hadn't chosen that option? We regret minuscule things in our life, and what would happen when you changed your entire life? This is probably going to look like debilitating depression and anxiety. We all hate the fear of the unknown. What would that look like if you could have changed your entire life? Now, we already see great examples in our world. It's legitimately a TV cliche to see a successful boss regret becoming successful. Note, this does not matter how high you're on the social ladder, how successful you become, you're still going to have this regret. This means opposition can't simply negate this argument by saying, well, you'll be successful. Now, let's look at this, how this impacts your life as a whole after you press this button. Firstly, on mental health, you're probably going to have two things that happens. Firstly, regret, secondly, guilt. Now, this is basically the same thing I explained, right? You're going to regret that you pushed the button because you simply don't know what's going to happen later. Now, secondly, on guilt. Now, this is also going to go into my rebuttals, right? All of these points, all about becoming a CEO, yet you feel that you don't deserve it, right? If you don't work for anything, you simply press the button, that even if you succeed at something, you're probably not going to feel that happiness in the same way if it's actually earned. Remember, humans have had thousands of years of evolution becoming societal animals. See that both of these arguments touch on that. Firstly, guilt is a core evolutionary process in which humans have been able to become societal animals. That's going to play into an evolutionary mechanism. The impact of this is twofold. Firstly, you're going to have an unsuccessful career. You cannot stress the burden of mental illness. You're going to have debilitating sadness. That's probably going to push back your job opportunities. Secondly, even with a successful career, you're going to feel guilt. You're going to feel that you don't deserve it. That's probably not going to be the happy life, the life that you want. And on top of that, you're going to lose 25 years of your life. Now, regret may occur on both sides of the world, but we believe that it's going to be worse on their side. Now, let's go into the second argument. You have how government shrinks the crucial lifespan of these individuals. Two mechanisms here. Firstly, time constraints. As a societal construct, we usually have the best years of our lives in career, job opportunities, and promotions. This is kind of intuitive, right? You're going to have the best years in your life later on because you're going to have promotions, you're going to have career opportunities. All of those are going to happen later on in life. You're literally cutting that later on. Now, moving on to the third argument, how government massively harms society. The thesis of this argument is that pressing the button will have negative consequences on everyone in society. The premise of this argument is that individuals are selfish. Why is this the case? Two things. Firstly, individuals can only feel their own senses. This is crucial because how we interact and think about the world is all derived from our own senses. Therefore, we can never truly understand what our individual feel is to a deeper extent. Secondly, there's this current social narrative that promote being selfish, such as having a self-care day or quiet day or being a girl boss and climbing to the corporate ladder, even at the expense of other individuals. The implication of this is that individuals are at least self-interested, if not selfish. How does this harm society? Three things. Firstly, in terms of money, given the characterization that you're going to have better average individual, you probably want money in order to get better homes, get better food, get better education, because all of these are materials, components that expensive in the cost of living crisis, but you're also rich, but also being rich is glamorized narratives, and that's why you're. And this is why it's like watching the Kardashians. This manifests into forms where you're trying to sabotage your work colleagues or trying to make money off of the stock market because you know it's profitable. This is a huge harm because that crashes the stock market, because the stock market is based on speculation. You can't advertise or make certain profit by yourself. Secondly, in terms of close relationships, we think that you try to harm other people close to you because you feel threatened or you care about them. This looks like forcing your partner to go through chemotherapy because you know they're going to die and you're scared of that. Thirdly, we think in general, selfish incentives are always against social benefit. The reason is that resources and success are inherently zero-sum. Money, promotions, attentions, things average individuals will crave are fundamentally zero sums, which means which is why you have to sabotage others to maximize your own success. What is the impact of this argument? Firstly, the impact of this argument is that society is harmed to a massive extent. We think this is not only about the individual who are harmed directly by this individual, but also people who are indirectly harmed by these individuals trying to profit off of the stock market. My second will expand away on this. So proud to oppose.
はい、ありがとうございます。では、ガバメント2人目、DPM の方お願いします。
I'll start in the next minute, but can everyone hear me?
はい、聞こえてます。
Okay, I'll take PY's true voice. My gender pronounces he, him. All right, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Could I firstly respond to their claim? The first thing they say against our argument is to say, average life isn't terrible. 2 responses here. 1, wasn't this an actual intuition pump? Because I didn't really hear a single response coming to our excellent arguments, because we gave you mechanisms. What they did was just give you intuition pumps and assume it will fly. Notice here, it doesn't. Notice here, we told you a lot of things. 1, we told you that if you are middle class, you don't have a financial freedom to do things in capitalistic society. The things that you can do are limited. You can work all the time. You have to work all the time. But on our side of the house, you have more time that you can do, and you have more time to study, for instance, which uniquely connects to things like better jobs, better schools in the future, which connects your afterlife. But secondly, I want to note, even if this is not true, even if we say average life isn't that terrible to an extent, I want to note that we are better, and this was the unique comparative we pushed to you. I think their side of the house was incapable of disproving our points. But secondly, the second thing you see is that, becoming a CEO of a company is simply not realistic. They say this is unrealistic, but this was just an assertion. But secondly, we gave you counter reasons. We've already experienced job application. You already know what the corporation corporations want, because you are the ones who are in the corporation and you are in, you know, like the actual opposite perspective of the ones who are like hiring those people, for instance. But you now have like more life experience to be able to study, for instance. So all of those crucially means is that it is not unrealistic, right? Guys, let's be honest, 25 years is super long, guys. You can do a lot of the things. Realistically speaking, I think we already won. Secondly, let's just respond to their claim. The first claim they gave to you is, mental health and your guilt is going to be magnified, and you push the button and you think that you're going to not like deserve those kind of things, for instance. The first thing I want to say is that it's really unclear as to why this guilt is super big to the extent that they have made this. This is because of the lack of proximity. The fact that you have pressed the button, it's going to be like the past as time passes, right? And because that the things that you achieve uniquely in the new world is likely to be more proximate to you in time, I just want you to note that you will still find happiness. You will still have sense of achievement when you win the debating competition, for instance. But the second thing I want to do is that insofar as they say, there's this growing narrative of things like you being selfish. I just want you to know that I'm going to flip this and tell you that you will understand that when individual face these kind of choice that was given, that you can press the button and you can go back 25 years ago, that I don't think that this guilt is going to be that much to begin with, because it is not your fault that you went across these kind of button and you have given a best shot of your chance, for instance. But secondly, presumably, guilt and regret in your life exist on either side of the house, i.e. this perception that you should have said thank you to your grandfather before he dies, for instance. On our side of the house, uniquely, you can actually relieve the other guilt and other regret that you have in your life insofar as you can like restart your life from the get-go. The last argument that they have given to you was to say, this gives negative consequences for everyone in society because you have selfish incentives. The first thing I want to do is that I think this is an extreme example. They relied on extreme instances. People generally are empathetic towards one another because we're social creatures, and especially if we're talking about people that are surroundings, I think we generally care about those individuals. But secondly, if they say that individuals
POI?
I don't understand what the delta really is. No, thank you. Because everyone is already selfish, as they say, and if this was an impact in society, this only changes one person. It's about one person changing, like accepting this choice to begin with. That's why I don't think this is going to be a big delta in the first place. Notice here that the biggest difference with the motion of the Dog Spirit semifinals was to say, this only changes one person, but on their side of the house, that changes the entire humanity. That's why I think this one person and its surroundings is where the actual delta lies upon. I think their argument is simply non-existent in the debate. I'm going to firstly extend on the impact and prove to you why our argument actually caters to a lot of the individuals, unlike one single person. One, I just want you to note that this is actually better for your family in two ways. The first thing I want to point out is you can generally give back to your family and give back to your relative when you have more financial freedom in the future. What does this look like? This looks like buying your father and buying your mother your like new houses, for instance. This looks like spending time, like more time with your parents insofar as you have the financial freedom to do so, and you have like more time to not work insofar as you have more money. This doesn't happen on their side of the house because they simply do not have a capacity, or at least they have significantly less time because they're under the control of your bosses and they're under the control of the money that you need, and you need to work in order to survive. Here's the incentive and analysis on why this is likely to happen on our side of the house, although this isn't going to be the contention. One is that you generally love your parents, you feel close to them. But secondly is that your parents and your friends did a lot for you, so you have a motivation to give back to your surroundings. But the second thing I want to talk about is that generally when your children and your relatives become successful, you will also be happy. So the thing that I'll prove to you is that in the instances when this one individual becomes extremely successful, your parents and your father and like your surroundings will also be happy. When you grow your children up, when you taught your children to learn their language, when you fed your children and you see your children grow to become super successful person, that's what gives your mother and father pride and joy. This is likely to happen on our side of the house. Before I move on, sure.
Aren't you robbing that pride and joy at the point in which you die before you can see your kids grow up?
Wait, so you're basically saying at the point at which you become a CEO, you are actually robbing that person from someone else? Is that the case? Because if it wasn't, sorry, I misunderstood the POI. But the thing is, we're actually fine with that. One, because in capitalistic society, that's a best metric. But two, if they say this is unfair, I don't think this is, because the thing is, we push the utilitarianism. We say that we maximize the happiness insofar as we've already talked about things like you being able to actually have a super successful life, and you can actually make your parents happier, for instance. But the second thing I want to point out is this is utilitarian equality. In the instances people do not know about this, i.e., people in the instances other individuals do not know that this person, one single person, pushed the button, I just want you to note that those individuals cannot perceive that this person is unfairly like pursuing his career, for instance. That's why I think that POI simply does not make sense. The last thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to prove to you my extension on why this is better for society. In order to do praiseworthy things that actually have a meaningful impact in society, you need to be extremely excellent. For instance, doctors save a lot of people, and it finds, for instance, things like cancer, but you still need to be extremely excellent and competent enough to save other lives. For instance, scientists. Notice here that there's a significant amount of number of people that do excellent things, like that are at the top of the corporate ladder, or that are scientists, for instance, because people aren't that excellent and people have limited time. Because I don't have epistemic access on what this actor actually wants, I cannot know what this person is going to be in the future. But what I can know is that given that they're extremely excellent, they probably want to contribute to society. This is for two reasons. One, when you achieve a lot, you generally want to do it better for other people, especially this actor, because this actor has experienced the middle class people's life, so they can be empathetic. But secondly, by helping others, you can also get happiness. For instance, Mr. Beast helps others, and he said in his interview, by helping, you can actually get happiness. So what I'm proving to you is that this person, when they get extremely successful, this is likely to actually do extremely good things for society, generally better for society. For all those reasons, propose.
はい、ありがとうございます。では次に DLO の方お願いします。
All right. Hello. Before I begin, my pronouns are he, him. I'll take POIs to the chat. I'll try to take 1, if not 2, during my speech. I also want to say happy birthday to Natsuki. Alrighty. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Having food on the table, having a home, having a job. In the modern age, we take these for granted, but the fact of the matter is that this is a very fortunate world this individual lives in. An average life is not a hellish landscape with constant pain, degradation, and hurt. It is a world where even if you aren't Jeff Bezos, you find happiness and passion, relationships, and jobs. We prefer this world. I'm going to talk about two things. First on individual, then on society. Regarding individual, Proposition gives you this push on how they have a happier life, and they give you a lot of mechanisms as to why this is the case. They say, oh, you lose interest in life, or your childhood is unique, you have more money, you have already learned to communicate. Let's talk about these claims, right? I think this is untrue for 5 reasons. 1, that you're already happy in daily life, in the average life. And sure, DLO can say we didn't mechanize it, but that it's an intuition pump. But the fact of the matter is it's true for the vast majority of individuals. 70% of Americans think that they're happy or very happy. This is fact. Second, you're very much financially constrained when you're age 25, because you, first of all, during your teenage years and when you're even younger, you don't have money as a kid, right? For example, last week, I can't go to a competition next week because it's too expensive. I just don't have money. And then even in your later years, in the years leading up to when you're 25, it's unlikely, and Proposition fails to prove to you how much money you can gain during that time, and therefore it's unlikely that your life is significantly happier in that time frame. Third, because a lot of the forms of happiness that individuals derive happiness from is very age restricted. Many individuals find happiness in things like sex, but also more importantly, many individuals find happiness in things like deep relationships, which can only be found when individuals around you are at a similar maturity level to what you are at. As like a 25-year-old inside a 0-year-old's body, you're unlikely to find meaningful relationships with other 0-year-olds. Fourth thing, that you're unlikely to create friends, and this is an extension upon my third response, because you can't relate to anyone around you. You can't make friends with them. Most people don't remember what their childhood was like, so I can't act like a reasonable 2-year-old would. And the fifth response, and finally, panel, this is very, very important, is that Prime Minister is sure very, very good at running the 2020 Team Canada case on how money is the prerequisite to happiness, but they fail to account for the fact that this case is about individuals who are in such a state where they can't handle basic emergencies. You're average, you can pay your hospital bills, you can get insurance, you're fine. Money being the prerequisite for happiness can only apply in the extreme scenarios in which you don't have money, because the fact of the matter is that at the point in which you're average, your source of happiness is likely derived from something other than monetary gain. POIs in chat. Because somebody is always richer than you, more successful than you, and more beautiful than you. Comparison is the robber of happiness. Comparison doesn't disappear in their world. DPM is sure very good at giving you callouts, but they have no actual rebuttals. Let's talk about oppositions, what we gave you in opposition. We told you firstly about this argument on regret and guilt. Here's government's response. They give you 3 things. The first response is to say that it's unclear why this guilt is so big due to a lack of proximity. But this is just wrong, right? Because the thing you achieve in your second life is that a direct cause of the fact that you push the button. The fact that I'm here right now because I gave a good speech in semis. I care about the fact that I gave a good speech in semis because that is the cause for why I'm here right now. It's very proximate to you. Second, the second response they give you is, oh, it's not your fault that you came across the button, but it is your fault that you pressed it, and that's the cause of your guilt. We're not saying we should blame, that these individuals are going to self-blame themselves for the fact that they came across a button when they otherwise didn't intend to. We're saying that these individuals are going to feel regret and guilt at the fact that they pressed it. Thirdly, they tell you that guilt and regret exist symmetrically, but rather that they try to flip this and say that they relieve forms of regret, like, oh, I forgot to say bye to my grandpa before he died. We think that guilt from pushing the button is far greater than everything else, because your grandpa dying, for example, has impact only on yourself and only in the short term. But the fact that you pressed the button, that you got an unfair advantage, and that every single piece of your success came off of this one small dumb luck, that is a proximate form of guilt. That is a never-ending cycle of guilt and regret that is likely to exist forever. Also note that all 3 of these rebuttals don't engage to the fact that our case was also on regret, because we tell you that it's likely that you regret pushing the button. I also think that our entire second argument on how your golden years are some of your best, all of that goes to prove to you that you're likely to regret the fact that you pressed the button, even if you don't feel guilty about it. With that said then, the second argument we gave was on how your golden years are some of the best. And there's a million reasons why this is true, and I don't think my first had time to say them all. A couple other reasons are, for example, you have reduced responsibilities because, as government concedes, a world without jobs is the only time you can be happy. Secondly, you can find out what your passions are, right? Note that this takes time, because 25 years likely isn't enough, and note that in your childhood, even if you had the mind of a 25-year-old, your opportunity is limited, so you're unlikely to find your passions in proposition. And the third reason is that you can probably opt into a fulfilling relationship uniquely in our world, because this often takes time and you can only gain maximum enjoyment out of it if you can live with that person longest. Also note that we think it's better that we err on the side of caution when it comes to this matter, as happiness is most important for the individual. Before moving to society, quick POI, Naki, or prop, sorry.
About your response against average person having too much money, our nuance was to say that when the crisis happens, or when you have your children, for instance, you don't have much money. What is your nuanced response?
We tell you that the average individual does have that money, but also the fact that you don't prove the probability of something like a crisis where all the money that you have saved up from your very average job isn't enough. You have to prove that probability, because otherwise this can't be a debate. We tell you that the probability of your golden years being the best is very high. We tell you that the probability of you feeling guilt is very high. You need to weigh your probability against ours. Regarding our societal impact, government's response is this, that society is unlikely to be impacted because you're altruistic. Now, ignoring the lots of mechanisms that Hikaru gave you from his first speaker speech, I'm also going to take a page out of DPM's book and tell you that there was no mechanism here aside from the fact that people are apparently empathetic, but this isn't true, right? Like, for example, I'm destroying government's case right now without empathy because it helps me win. People are inherently selfish first, then empathetic second. I think that society is very, very important in this debate, and there's a lot of reasons why. Like, the severity of the harm is much higher, right? On Proposition's world, at best, you're benefiting these individuals. In our world, in our case, you're directly harming some people. Second, on likelihood, because it's much more likely that you're selfish than it is that you're very altruistic. And third, that number of people impacted, this is fairly obvious. We impact a lot of society. They only impact people close to them at best. And fourthly, on vulnerable people and the vulnerability of people that are impacted, because most of the people who are disadvantaged from stock market crash are going to be the bottom line people who don't have money cushions. Those are the people that we protect. Very, very proud to stand on OP.
はい、ありがとうございます。じゃあ次にガバメントウィップ、ガバ3人目の方お願いします。
I'm so sorry that actually my camera is broken and I think my Wi-Fi is not, I think, a lot of it working. So can I turn off my camera? Actually, I'm so sorry. Okay. My speech will start in a minute. Hold on a few seconds, please. Okay. My speech will start. 3, 2. I'm gonna talk about 3 things in speech. Firstly, gonna talk about individual guilt and individuals and guilt, and secondly, gonna talk about society, and lastly, gonna talk about weighing. But before we move on, I'll cover responses against to the opposition side. The former speaker told you, as our second speaker told you, we think that average life isn't really happy life. On this point, the government or the opposition side responses 5 responses. Firstly, like they say, like it's have already happened in average. But we think it's not true because for the vast majority, you know, because we think that they say like 70% of Americans are feeling happy, however, but the, you know, as you time pass, your friends are dying, like as you like, you know, age, you know. So we think that they never deny our arguments completely. So that is why we think that these, of course, they can feel happiness temporarily. However, we think that as they get age, they will feel more depressed, and depression, these kinds of negative emotions will feel in their life, in their hearts. And secondly, they told you that our like average person are like, you know, you are average person, so therefore like you don't have much money, for example. But firstly, this is not true. In the most likely case, I think middle class people need to care about a lot of issues, know like whether or not they die or not, but still about whether they can afford their loans, afford their homes, etc. And also like, but like a nuance that we gave you was to say that even if they have money, right now, like they do not have enough money when the financial crisis happens. And when they like you know, financial crisis happens, like we think that they don't have enough money. And also, so like we think that
POI.
it's like likely to happen. So why this is likely to happen? No, thank you. One, financial crisis is likely to happen a few times in your life. For example, in 1933, like these kinds of big financial crisis is happen like these in America and in the world, in the total world. But we didn't need to prove that probability to win. But firstly, we had to prove that it will happen to an extent in your life at the same point. And secondly, this looks like 28 financial crisis, as I said. And thirdly, in those instances, it does affect the vast majority of people. It's oftentimes the middle class people working at the middle of the corporate ladder that will have your job cuts. So let me move on to our talk about the first. I'm going to talk about individuals, which means like, you know, guilt or something. So in this point, we have already told you 2 things. Firstly, we think that the average life isn't really happy life. And secondly, we think that it is like in our side of the house, many like we can like share many happiness with other people, you know, like relatives or like, you know, your families, relatives, and so on, your neighbors, like by joining volunteers or and so on. Like the only responses that options they gave you, like only 2 responses. Firstly, it's not really, they say that average life is really happy, but as I said, these arguments, their rebuttal is not true. And secondly, they talk about like, you know, oh, it's not realistic, become CEO, it's impossible. But we think even if like these kinds of knowledge and experience that they accumulate in their first life isn't really important, we think that they can use their child time life, you know, time during childhood, like for studying or like some accumulating new experiences. That is why they can take really advantages in terms of getting job, for example. That is why they can earn a lot of money and they can grab their happiness and they can share their happiness. And also, no responses against to joining volunteers and sharing happiness to other people. That is why we think that these kinds of, we can, in our side of the house, not all
progress.
people who push a button, but also we think that our relatives or our family and our neighbors
POI.
also get happiness in our side of the house. No, thank you. So on this point, the options I gave you 1 point or 2 points. First they told you about guilt, but we think that this isn't the case to you right now. So the thing is, we live in a society like full of luck, and when you were given a chance to succeed, when you receive $2 million for lottery, like these kinds of you have already feel these kinds of guilt or regret in our side of the house. And also, we think that these kinds of guilt, which is created by pushing this button, is really temporary, we think, simply because 2 reasons. Firstly, these kinds of pushing button, of course, the long term will have this will lose your time, of course. However, it is your life. That is why you have active incentive to live your life and to make your life more happier, more excellent. So if you we're born as 25 years, I think you will more study, or even if you depressed by pushing that button, you will recover from it, and also going toward and making your life more excellent, more brighter and brighter. That is why we think that these kinds of guilt or regret is only one time, is temporarily, it's only temporarily one, and also these kinds of are symmetric. And lastly, we think that in our word, we can as our second speaker told you, in our side of the house, we can relieve these kinds of guilt by reborn 25 years. That is why, in terms of guilt, we have already won. Their argument is not stand. And secondly, we think that even and even if you feel guilt, I think you can still feel happiness, because even if you feel guilt to an extent, I think the fact that you can feel happiness when you win competitions, or when you win this debate tournament. So I think psychology of Seiji wins as the debate. He probably stated that I quote that I am destroying Protestant's case because I'm empathetic, but if you think about it, the case of Matt is pretty inconsistent, because of the one hardly claim individuals are so empathetic to the extent they feel guilt when they push the button. So sorry. So let me move on to the second clashes, which is which is more preferable in terms of for society, And on this one, I have already told you that these kinds of people who push a button will share a lot of happiness with family and relatives, but no responses to the opposition side. And also when they have told you that massive harm will happen, but as our second speaker told you, they only give you really, really extreme example, and also German people are not doing such a really, really selfish thing, for example. That is why, and also it's not a big delta between these kinds of it's not a big delta between their side and our side of the house in terms of this point. That is why we think that in terms of the society, which is beneficial for society, we have already won. And also we can share a lot of happiness that I created by this button with other people, with my family, with our relative, for example. And also we can be CEOs and provide more profits to the society. For all those reasons, in terms of individuals in society, we have already won this debate. Thank you.
はい、ありがとうございます。では次にオポジションウェップの方お願いします。
Hello, am I audible and visible?
はい、OK です。
ありがとうございます。POI is verbally, please. Speech will start in 3, 2, and 1. The glaring flaw with the proposition case is that the average person is not Steve Jobs because they are not excellent and they are not inherently talented. Proposition could not meet the burden that they set out from themselves because they never proved why looking at your life once would suddenly give you the IQ of Einstein. 2 clarifications before 2 clashes. Number 1, what will you actually learn after pressing this button? Because we told you, as per the info side, you only know the details of your life. This means that you do not have the objective knowledge to actually climb up the corporate ladder and make all these inventions and become a doctor. Therefore, this is why we prove to you that the probability of you attaining success is for you to take the easy way out. Because you do not have the knowledge to make an iPhone, but you do have the knowledge that Bitcoin is popular, this is why you are going to crash the stock market by preemptively saying to everyone and trying to collect their funds by getting them to invest in Bitcoin, because that is the only accessible knowledge that you actually have. The implication of this is that you do not have the capacity to do all these altruistic things because your knowledge does not extend that far. Therefore, our harms on society still stand within this debate. Secondly, what is the financial capacity for average individuals? Because the only harm that they argue is that individuals do not have money in terms of crisis. If they can figure that out in a 25-minute preparation, the average individual can do that too. This is why we have things like insurance, where individuals might not have a huge amount of money, but they preemptively invest so that they can have that money within that emergency. Therefore, in the very worst case, we still think things like welfare exist to a wider extent. It was unclear what the impact was. First question, on societal impact, DP tries to weigh it out by saying this is not a delta, but this was a very unclear weighing because we clearly told you two things. Number one, that resources are zero sum and your selfish incentives directly contradict the benefit of society, because things like money, things like you getting that promotion and becoming a CEO, all the things that they support on their side of the house is inherently zero sum. But secondly, on a mechanistic basis, we told you that individuals cannot be empathetic by the way humans are made. You only know your own emotions. You only experience and know your life through your emotions, which is why inherently you are only going to prioritize your own emotions. So this is why individuals are going to do things like sabotage the person who know might be a contention for that for your promotion, do things like try to crash the stock market because they want that money right now, especially given that their lifespan is very, very short. What is their engagement here? Their engagement is that individuals will be successful and others will be happy. Number one, this does not engage with the people who genuinely feel happy when other people are successful. This response only extends to the people who are your family. But secondly, even for the people who care about you, they are going to be sadder that you died. Because let's take DPM's own analysis that families love each other. Then it doesn't matter if you are a millionaire or not. It matters that you are alive and you exist within that world. Therefore, we think all the way from DPM stands, and we can independently take this debate within this clash. Second clash then, on individual happiness. The problem with that case is that they assume knowledge equals success. Number one, first response, the biggest issue with their case is that they assume individuals are unhappy on our side of the house. I'm going to deal with this in two ways. A, this is blatantly not true, because this debate isn't about whether or not the average life is objectively terrible or objectively happy. This is about how people themselves, the average person themselves, feel about their average life. You know your average. It does not matter if you are CEO of Apple, because you are not aiming for that in the first place. Therefore, we think happiness is symmetric because individuals don't know the potential that they have. Therefore, it's likely that because happiness is symmetric, the amount of time you can have with that happiness is the delta for this rate, which is why we need the 25 years of your lifespan. But secondly, I'm going to flip this. Individuals are unhappy on their side of the house because they constantly feel like they have to make their life better because now they have this magical knowledge. Individuals on our side of the house know their average, which is why they're always going to be content with the life that they have. Secondly, let's cut their premise in two ways. Number one, we don't think knowledge is going to result in success, because even if they say you are a very talented teenager, after you press the button, you are literally reborn as a baby. They cannot prove to us that a toddler is suddenly going to make Apple. Secondly, we think even if you can gain some sort of success, you are unhappy because the way you gain success is because you sabotage other people to do so. Therefore, I think the time that you take to reach that success initially is tormented. And even when you do, you are fundamentally unhappy. Let's engage that claim on teenagers. Number one, this contradicts the entirety of that case, because if they are arguing that success is something so hard to attain that you need to literally look at your life and cut 25 years of your lifespan, you cannot do things like studying and like enjoying your life and having a girlfriend and going on a date and going to Disneyland all at the very same time. But secondly, I don't think teenagehood is fun, because as they analyze, if the biggest issue for individuals is money and the freedom that they can have and the autonomy that comes in a capitalistic world, then teenagers have none of that whatsoever because their lives are very structured. They have to go to school. Their best case is a teenager literally goes to like a very nice cram school. We don't think that is the case. We think on our side of the house, if they're arguing that freedom is important, that is much better on our side because you had the additional 25 years of your lifespan. We think furthermore, in that 25 years of your lifespan, you can actually gain the knowledge because they cannot just assert that this knowledge is very important. You can probably gain some sort of knowledge by living out your life just as you are. We think furthermore, things like financial freedom only comes when you had that additional 25 years. What was our argument here? Two things. A, we said you were sad because your lifespan shrinks. The only response is they said you are going to be successful, so the lifespan does not matter. But I think we've already dealt with this. Furthermore, I think that lifespan is incredibly important because other than things like money, I think death is the biggest fear of people because that is what people cannot control and they are fearful of. If they're saying pressing a button and having knowledge is good, then people must be scared of not knowing, which is why they are scared of death. But secondly, about regret, right? I think that claim that they came from DPM about regret is not proximate to you is absolutely false because all of that impacts necessarily rely on you having to engage with the knowledge that you had after pressing this button on a daily basis. Therefore, it's always going to be proximate to you. What is the weighing of this argument then? Number one, even if they can only exclusively get money on their side of the house, these individuals are not happy because they're emotionally tormented. Furthermore, I think the probability of success was never proven on their side. But B, let's take the realistic case of both sides. Realistically, money is absolutely symmetric because the thing is, you are average. You have things like insurance, you have things like welfare. Furthermore, if you had the additional 25 years, you also had things like pension. It was completely unclear why they told us we had no money, we had pension. Furthermore, we think how you use that money and the time you have to use that money is the only delta. Reply is far too late to engage.
はい、ありがとうございます。では、ポジションリプライの方お願いします。
Alrighty. Starting in 3, 2, 1. If I won this debate because a judge was asleep and a judge randomly chose to vote for me, could I actually be happy about it? If after that I got offered a scholarship and had the best time of my life, could I still actually enjoy it guilt-free? And if after that I got into a great university, got a great job, became a millionaire, could I still actually live that life guilt-free? Because I don't think so. But sure, maybe people are ignorant pricks who don't have a care in the world apart from helping themselves. In that case, wouldn't the rest of society be destroyed? Everything has an opportunity cost. I got the scholarship, which means Naki didn't. An accumulation of this leads to devastating impacts proud to oppose. Taught two things, individual, then society. Under the individual clash, I have three things I want to cover. Firstly, on guilt and regret. Secondly, on your golden years. Then finally, on living a happier life, which is opposite proposition's claim. Firstly, regarding guilt and regret, all of their engagement boils down to one thing, that you're not proximate to that guilt and regret, and therefore it's unlikely to impact you at all, or at least in the long term. But from my second speech, I tell you that it is very, very proximate because that you pressing that button is the cause for everything else that happened in your life, is the cause for whatever success that proposition wants to claim in your life, and is the cause for any happiness that you can get in proposition. So even under the scenario in which proposition has all the happiness in the world and we can't co-opt that, I think that all of that happiness is tainted at the point in which you got an unfair advantage that you did not deserve, that you did not work for, and was just dumb luck. The second subclash is on your golden years being the best. And there was a lot of reasons that Hikaru and I gave you on like deep relationships or the lack of jobs in your golden years or finding about your passions, which actually takes a very long time. Also, the very important note here is that we would actually rather err on the side of caution in this regard, because why sacrifice your last 25 years of your life, which could be the best, for split chance at creating the next Apple. Note that all of their illustration on how amazing 25 years and how transformative your first 25 years of your life could be can be co-opted here, because we also get that same time frame, but at a much better point when you're actually free from the constraints of parents and schools. The third subclass is on living a happier life, and I have two things under this. First, is your average life actually good? And then secondly, is reliving your life actually going to be better? Regarding if your average life is already good, we say yes, government says no. Government's reasons boil down to things like, oh, maybe I can't buy insurance. But government does spend literally like 20, 25 minutes of prep, maybe less to figure that out. People know that crisis is a real possibility. Because note, as an average individual, it is not a matter of capacity. You have the money, you have more money than like 50% of the world already, right? You are a well-off individual. So for example, in Japan, right, like 618,000 yen a year, pretty good wage and enough to afford most things in life that you actually need. Also note that it's about whether you perceive your life to be good and therefore can be happy and therefore can be happy, right? Ignorance is bliss. You don't compare yourself to Kim Kardashian. You're happy and content with the life you have. However, proposition says, oh, we can make your life better. And we gave you 5 responses from my second speaker's speech. But also, I have 2 other notes. Note 1, that their mechanisms like, oh, studying as a kid is likely impossible, as Reno tells you. Because as a 5-year-old, are you going to tell your mom, Mom, I want to start a company and I'm going to sell this and this and this, and trust me, it will definitely succeed. And then second note, as Reno tells you, your younger life is incredibly structured. There's very little you can do. In my last 20 seconds regarding society, just note that people are not altruistic. Notice that notice that we give you all of these mechanisms as to why people are not altruistic, which goes completely unengaged to people are selfish first. And government whip says literally themselves, and taking this analysis that the average person can't withstand a financial crisis, I think that the harms are devastating. I gave you the 4 way mechanisms. Reno reflashed them to you in her speech. I think that this alone takes us this debate. Very, very proud to stand on the side that benefits individuals and societies. Proud to oppose.
はい、ありがとうございます。ガバメントリプライの方お願いします。
Hi, can I be heard?
はい、OK です。
We'll start in the next minute. Okay. All right. Psychology of Seiji wins us this debate. He proudly stated, and I quote, I am destroying Proposition's case because I'm not empathetic and individuals are selfish. If you think about it, the case of MAD is simply inconsistent to begin with. Because at one hand, they claim individuals are so empathetic to the extent they feel guilt when they push the button. They're super nice to other people to the extent they can feel that for the rest of their life. Even if you succeed, you won't feel happiness because you feel guilt all the time. But in the same breath, they respond to our empathy, saying that people don't care a single thing because what they do care is their surroundings. What they do care is their own success. Seiji is correct in saying that individuals are selfish. But if that was the case, their argument on guilt is false. Because make no mistake, guilt is predicated upon you feeling like empathetic towards other people and you stepping into someone else's shoes because you think that it is unfair and you think that other individuals is actually like, I'm sorry to other individuals because it is not my own skill, but it is rather the fact that you're unlucky, but I'm lucky. The thing is, I think the guilt push is simply unrealistic, simply not standing in this debate, by the pure nature that their claim contradicted their claim. I'm going to talk about a few things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at our path to victory and prove to you why this is big enough to win the debate. And secondly, I'm going to look at their path to victory and disproving you why this is unclear to begin with. Firstly then, on our path to victory. This debate was ultimately confusing, but our logic was extremely simple. Let me just reflash this one by one. We told you that you can actually have more time to prepare for society, and you can study more time on our side of the house for two reasons. One is that unlike normal students who are likely to have short-term interests, insofar as you have experienced job and you have lived your life, you are likely to have an incentive to want to actually study or want to actually prepare for your future insofar as you understand the struggles that you will face in the future. Secondly, we told you about the mental age, and I think towards those mechanisms, I think there was not much response to begin with. Why is this important? They say you already have like a lot of money, but empirically speaking, when a lot of the financial crisis happened, I think I just want you to know that it was actually the people that are middle class that were working at the middle of the corporate ladder who were actually sacrificed in the name of job cuts. And I think we actually are not going to be in those kind of individuals because you are going to get into a higher position. But the second thing I want to point out is, I think as an average individual, you have a desire to want to have like cars, for instance, to have a better home, for instance. So I think even on the perception level, I think you as an individual feel, if I had more money, I would be happier. So the thing is, even on a generic level, we are already winning. But the third thing I want to point out is amount of money is actually really, really important when it comes to life-saving situations. Like for instance, medical expenses. The thing is, rich people can actually pay for better doctors and better treatment, whereas middle-class individuals cannot because they have a lot of talent surroundings. The thing is, we cannot topple the capitalistic society, and the simple fact that you have more money on our side of the house, even if you're not Einstein, in itself is debate winning. Secondly, let's talk about their path to victory. Notice here that the guilt is like literally self-disproved by their second speaker. But secondly, about their claim and bad for society. Reno's mechanization was to say, because you cannot be a doctor, you are likely to use the knowledge you have to disadvantage other people because that is more probable for you to be able to succeed. Firstly, I don't think that average reasonable person is that extreme to the extent you want to be a villain insofar as your selfish incentives align with not doing with those kind of things. This is because it also contradicts your selfish incentives. Like when you make a confusion, you might be hated by your others, but you might get arrested if you buy their own illustration on things like making confusion. But secondly, I want to note that given that it is a selfish incentive, I just want you to note that it is asymmetric given that everyone is selfish. They have said that on their own. For instance, when you look at things like Squid Game currency, which is one of the one of the examples of the Bitcoin that created the confusion societal scale, I just want you to know that this happened without the existence of this button. That's why I just don't understand the delta. This is not semifinals in Doxbridge, guys. Just let's be honest. The delta exists within this individual, and we make this individuals happier on less speculation on proposition.
はい、ありがとうございます。じゃあ、グランドファイナルはこれで以上となりますので、ジャッジの皆さんは、ジャッジ1に行きましょう。ディベーターの皆さんは、結果発表の方はお待ちください。お疲れ様でした。
ありがとう。お疲れ様。
お疲れ様です。
Thank you
で
guys.
した。
ありがとうございます。
Doxbridge めっちゃ出てくるやん。
I love Doxbridge, man. That's one of my best like favorite
Doxbridge セ
debate.
ミファイ好きだけど。めっ
Like
ちゃ
TG, Tim Puzik, so correct.
Why did you spend 10 seconds in your reply doing the Squid Game illustration?
That was the first example that I could have think of.
Squid Game, it's forced.
Yeah, but like, no, I don't know. Like, I don't know why. Like, I think I heard this example in like one of the videos of Johnny Harris of like explaining Bitcoins or something. You
Yeah.